Singo ere mama, singo ere mama, leo, leo. Singo ere mama, shanga baya.
Before the arrival of colonial rule, the land that would later be called Kenya was not a political vacuum. It was a region shaped by centuries of migration, trade, conflict, and cooperation. By the late 19th century, Kenyan societies such as the Kikuyu, Luo, Kamba, Luya, Kalenjin, Maasai, Mijikenda, and Somali had well-established systems of governance. Authority rested with councils of elders, age-set systems, clan leadership, and spiritual authority. Political power was decentralized but deeply legitimate, rooted in land, lineage, and custom. Along the coast, interaction with Arab and Swahili traders had already connected East Africa to the wider Indian Ocean world. However, inland communities largely retained their independence, until European imperial ambitions reached the region. The scramble for East Africa. By 1890, Europe was in the midst of the scramble for Africa. Industrial powers sought raw materials, new markets, and strategic territory. Through diplomatic negotiations rather than African consent, Britain and Germany divided East Africa under the Anglo-German Agreement of 1890. This agreement placed present-day Kenya firmly under British influence. Control initially passed to the Imperial British East Africa Company, IBIAC, a private chartered company tasked with administering the territory and extracting economic value. However, the company struggled financially and militarily. It lacked the resources to govern effectively or suppress resistance. As a result, in 1895, the British government took direct control, declaring the region the East Africa Protectorate. This marked the beginning of formal colonial rule. Imposing colonial authority. British control was initially confined to the coast and a few inland stations. The interior remained largely autonomous. To secure political dominance, the British relied on military force, treaties signed under coercion, and collaboration with selected local leaders. One of the most transformative projects of this era was the Uganda Railway, constructed between 1896 and 1901. Officially described as a humanitarian and commercial venture, the railway served a clear political purpose: to secure British control of the interior and protect the source of the Nile. Over 30,000 Indian laborers were imported to build the railway. African communities were displaced, grazing land was lost, and forced labor became common. Entire regions were reorganized around the railway line, permanently altering Kenya's political geography. Land alienation and settler rule. With the railway complete, European settlers began arriving in significant numbers. They identified the fertile Central Highlands as ideal for large-scale agriculture. These lands, later known as the White Highlands, were declared Crown land. African communities, particularly the Kikuyu, were forcibly removed or confined to reserves. Land, which had been the foundation of political authority and social identity, was now controlled by the colonial state. African leaders lost power, while colonial administrators and settler farmers gained unprecedented influence. Chiefs were appointed or dismissed by the British, often chosen for loyalty rather than legitimacy. This system, known as indirect rule, eroded traditional governance and replaced it with colonial authority enforced through taxation, forced labor, and punishment.